Great morning, world. Great morning, friends. This is your boy, Dr. JC Doornick, aka The Dragon. And this is what we're calling Make Sense Mondays. And we're doing it in a different format. We're streaming it to a couple of platforms once again. I used to do these as Facebook Lives from my phone and things like that. But anyway, it's great to be here. Feeling a very, very big sense of gratitude for a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here, and just the concept of becoming more aware of things. We're going to talk about that today. Today's topic of discussion is the idea of making sense of things like self-belief, motivation, and willpower. So what it is that we do here. Hey, great morning, Kathy. Yeah, so please chime in. If you're here with us live, one of the weird things about streaming live is you kind of start feeling like you're talking to yourself, but then here come the people. Hey, great morning, Susan. So yeah, we're gonna talk about this really fun topic. But first, I just want to just share a little bit about what it is that we are doing, what we're up to. My wife and I, Mika the chicken. Great morning, Vicky. Good to see you. Some folks from our Make Sense Academy family. Great morning, Jonathan. Good to see friends. And while we're going along here today, I would love, just feedback and questions and things like this. This is not recorded or saved anywhere. This is just live and raw. And its purpose is to just get this morning going, get your morning, thus your day, your week, and maybe even your month, and maybe even your year and life going in the right direction. Because whenever we wake up in the morning, just remember we're always booting up yesterday's programming, and we have a tendency of just kind of going with the flow. So the purpose of the Make Sense Academy and the purpose of my podcasts and things like this, and this live, this Make Sense Monday, is just to create a different conversation that focuses on the things that are making you go, in your head, right? Just those pressing discussions that you're having in your mind about like things like whether or not you can or can't do things, and just all these different things and distractions that can very easily cause you to unconsciously follow the herd and stop following through and things like that. So if you're the kind of person that seeks, more in life, I always refer to those kind of people as seekers of the You want to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. Then this is for you. Hey, great morning, Colleen and friends. That's right. So the concept of making sense of these topics is to take those topics, those pressing discussions that you're having in your mind. Great morning, Lori. Good to see everybody. And remember, you can share this. If you push the share button, you can share it to your social media platform and maybe help somebody else out. The value of making sense of things is it'll just make things become more apparent and aware to you, so that you don't get tethered to the idea of them, and you can actually move forward today, pass go, and collect $200. So just a couple of little housekeeping. So really excited to, if you don't know who I am, my name's Dr. JC Doornick. People call me the Dragon. I hosted my first podcast called Rise Up with Dragon, which has almost 250 episodes. You can go like and follow that. Turned out to be one of the top 1% podcasts out there. But very excited about a couple of new projects coming. So on February 19th, we're launching our newest podcast, which is going to go live that day on all the major platforms, and that's called Makes Sense. And you'll see that one coming out. So today's topic is just kind of like a highlight reel of one of those podcast topics from the Make Sense podcast. And then also we've got a lot of cost-free things like the podcast. We've got a Telegram community, and then we also have a private community called the Make Sense Academy. A lot of those people are here with us today, where we rise up like this on a regular basis. It's actually the brainchild of my wife, who's a mental health therapist, Mika. And we just wanted to create an environment that was solution focused, judgment free, that really focused on these discussions to, help people make distinctions in life and become more conscious and aware of things so that they can move forward. Hey, great morning, Deb Silverman. And it's just so cool to see all of you guys here. Great to see you. And I look forward to the day that we're making a bigger impact. So the reason why this topic is important, we'll get into it right now. Like in this series of my podcasts, you'll see that we're unveiling things that you might not be aware of that are potentially holding you back, preventing you from seeing things the right way and responding to things the right way in favor of you moving forward. And the concepts like self-belief, motivation, and timing are side effects and symptoms that you have been led to believe, right? So the reason why this is important in this sequence is once we start becoming more conscious and we start becoming aware of the fact that the way we look at things is not necessarily our idea, right? So this is the flow of what we talk about in the Make Sense Academy. And by the way, if you're interested in any of those aspects of things that you want to check out, all risk-free, mostly cost-free, just type in a comment or a private message to me and just say community, and then I'll send you information and you can check it out. But as we start becoming more conscious and aware of the fact that our brain, for instance, has 40 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and somehow we just miraculously tether to like 4 of them, and we create this reality and things like that. So once we become aware of this, and that's called brain awareness perception. If you've been following along, I think I spoke about that last week on Make Sense Monday. We start to realize like, hey, I might want to look under the hood. Wayne Dyer used to always have this wonderful quote that says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Isn't that kind of what we're all trying to do? It's very, very easy to understand. Yeah, if I change the way I look at things, the things I look at change. But how do you execute on that? So that's what this podcast is about, is not just becoming aware of things, but actually having tangible tools that you can actually begin to practice. So the highlights of this particular podcast episode that I'm going to load about 5 episodes for the new podcast, Make Sense, on February 19th. So you'll notice this will be one of those. What's interesting about this episode, in light of this idea that there's this program going on, we've been programmed by our mother, father, teacher, preacher, and society. It's happening to you right now. You absorbing what I'm talking about is something that you're consuming right now. So what are you consuming? Because that's what you're assuming. And then there's also evolution. Evolution says that, things like natural selection, these things have been passed on to us. So here you are trying to change the way you look at things so that the things that you look at change, but that's easier said than done. I give this analogy that, our concepts, and our programming is kind of like an oil tanker, which weighs 120,000 tons in some cases, and it's steaming ahead and it knows exactly where to go. And here you are trying to tell it to go the other way. So it's possible, and anybody can do this with the right tools, but it's a challenge. And there lies the problem. And when we start coming up with concepts that motivation, timing and self-belief are precursors or prerequisites, that's what this podcast episode is about, is we all of a sudden get this idea that if you're not motivated and you don't believe in yourself and the timing is wrong, then you cannot go after things. Right. And as a side note there, we talk a lot about the mortality mentality. I just want to challenge anybody that and we talk about this in length in the podcast. The podcasts are usually 30 minutes to an hour long, the episodes. So if you're saying things like, oh, now's not the right time, or, I just don't think that I'm right for the job, or, I'm going to wait until this specific date after things clear up, or I'm just not feeling it, things like that, right? Those are signs and symptoms of this programming, this concept that at some phase of your life, in fact, most of the days that have led up to that moment where you're exhibiting those side effects and symptoms, you've somehow tethered to this notion that those things are required to succeed. This is the reason why this is so important is they're holding you back. You know, it's very rare that somebody says, I did everything that I possibly could and never quit and I didn't succeed, right? It's pretty rare that that happens, right? Typically, whenever somebody is looking at the idea of something that they desire and going after it with reckless abandonment, typically they get into some form of a contemplation phase, either before they do it or just after they start doing the work, right? Because the work is very, very often coming without great success. You know, there's frustration and, you know, that leads to procrastination. I mean, just think about all those things. And as soon as we recognize or get a tinkle of whatever it is that makes us feel that we can't do it, rather than just admitting that this is part of our programming, right? And learning how to bypass it and continue going, that's when we start reverting to these principles like motivation. This is the key of what I want to share. And this is what comes out and that you'll get in the podcast episode is we start to exhibit, it's almost like they're contingency plans. When we start talking about the fact that I'm not motivated or I don't believe in myself or the timing is wrong, right? Which really is silly to hear, you know, say, oh, now's not the right time to succeed, right? As if you know how much time you have. So when those things start to come out, it's not your fault. Most people do that. In fact, I would say over 95% of people. I mean, there's a very, very distinct reason why if you look at the top of the mountain and there, you see the few people sitting at this table of success, there's a very, very distinct reason why there's so few people. And that is these people get what I'm talking about, right? These people somehow feel those feelings of doubt, right? Of this, you know, contingency plan and this escape route kind of comes out in this explanation that this is not the right time. I don't believe in myself, or I'm just not feeling it, those things. They feel those things, the people at the top of the mountain, but somehow they bypass them and do it anyway. So the podcast unveils the secret to that. But what I'm here to do today, just to kind of help you with your Make Sense Monday and start your day off right, is not to tell you, I'm not here to call you on your BS, right? Because I think we're all full of BS, right? That's not what the intention of this is it's just to give you the opportunity, if you're feeling like you're stuck or you're struggling or anything like this episode, but this message today is just an opportunity for you to kind of look at that idea of maybe this is part of this program that I heard the dragon talking about. Maybe I actually don't need to believe in myself, right? I mean, I always challenge people, like, how many days, and you can put this in the comment if you have the ability to speak transparently, how many days a year out of 365 days, how many days do you wake up feeling like the timing is right, that you're motivated and you believe in yourself? I mean, I would say if I evaluated myself, I would say it's about 10. Now, I have a structure and a system and a morning routine. This is part of it that gets me in this illusion that I can succeed. But when I wake up, I'm typically not motivated. In fact, I feel feelings of anxiety and depression and worry and concern like anybody else, right? So if I'm thinking that those things are prerequisites and precursors to success, well, then I'm never going to succeed. That's the point. So all I'm inviting you to do is kind of like hear that, recognize that you'll build a defense mechanism up to it. And I go into this in length in the podcast, this idea that, well, you don't understand my situation, right? If you're the kind of person that less than 50%, well, that's pretty good, Lori, if you're 50% of the time feel motivated. But I have a feeling that's probably because you have a structure and a system to put yourself in a position where you believe in yourself. But if you're right now in this moment, hearing this message, getting it, but finding yourself saying, you don't understand my scenario. Like you might have some trauma in your family or in your life. You might have this feeling of responsibility taking care of a loved one, or your kids. I mean, I've got that stuff going on right now too. So those are valid excuses. But excuses are really just things that you could use to describe that you're going to go after something anyway and just say, and it's going to be challenging because. But as soon as you use an excuse to excuse yourself, that's a sign and a symptom of this programming I'm telling you, right? It's one thing to say, right now is a difficult time because I'm taking care of my mom or my dad, or my children are struggling, or work is really busy, or something like that, right? It's okay to describe that, but all that is an indication of is the number one ingredient for any form of success in the world, and that is that it's tough. It's tough. My next book that's coming out is called The Suck. It's about that, right? For the most part, life does suck and then you die, right? So what I'm talking about is recognize that and just go, interesting, right? Can't prove it otherwise. I have these feelings that are saying he's wrong because my situation is unique, right? But he even said that was a sign and a symptom of this programming. I wonder, maybe, right, if it's right. And if you can get to that place right now where you'll even get open and curious about yourself and about that potential BS, that is a great step. And that's what this episode is about. So you'll notice that the podcast episodes that are coming out, February 19th, that launches. If you want information with that, go to www.riseupwithdragon.com, and just anything that you sign up for, there's nothing there that captures you to make money or anything like that. But anything you sign up for, our newsletter or anything, will put you in the mix of getting notifications about all of this stuff. So go to www.riseupwithdragon.com, sign up for that. And once again, if you want information on any of these things that we're doing on a regular basis in this community that my wife and I created, just write community and I'll send you that. But this is what this is about, is this moment where you go, you know what? There's a chance that he's right, right? And you know that but if you, and you might even start building a case against that with your current reality. And that's totally normal. That's the herd mentality. But if you can step into that space where you realize that the way you look at things right now might not be your idea. They might be downstream side effects and symptoms of what you've been taught by your mother, your father, your teacher, your preacher, by society. Just think about it for a second. If you're contemplating moving forward and you're unconsciously in a comparative reality or experiencing something like imposter syndrome because you're consuming social media all the time, maybe even feeling that listening to me right now, that I could never do what he does, right? All you're looking at right here with me is somebody that decided to do something no matter what. Scared, do it anyway. Unconfident, do it anyway. Bad timing, do it anyway. That's all you're seeing right now. Anybody can do that, right? And we'll go into, in the podcast episodes, we'll go into the idea of how you can leverage that. But just catch yourself. It's like check yourself before you wreck yourself. Catch yourself saying things, and I would only encourage you to challenge it, right? Challenge it by just going, I just said this, I think this, I believe this, but is it true? And then if you still think it's true, then ask yourself, where did I learn this? Where did I learn that belief, timing, and motivation and willpower and all of that stuff? Where did I learn that those are required for my success? And why are so few people sitting at the top of the mountain, right, in this vast sea of people that all have the same potential? Get open and curious about that. And what you'll find is that you'll find the answers right there, that it's the same for everybody, right? So you might want to focus more on what you want and why and what its value is. And just as a disclaimer, my podcast and these discussions are heavy. You know why? Because the conversations in your mind are heavy, right? And that's why we run from them most of the time. So I just want you to understand that I understand, because I'm living it, that this is exhausting. It's exhausting to actually look at the truth in life, right? And it's frustrating and it's inconvenient. And then all of a sudden you might even hear your brain saying something like, you know what, F it. You only live once. I want to have fun. I don't need this. Like, I'm not cut out for this. I'm just, hey, it's Miller time, right? If you hear that, that's a side effect and a symptom of the program as well, right? So it's exhausting to play this game, and I understand it, because it's a lot easier to just believe in what it is that you believe, right? Although it's not an effective way of moving forward, it's an effective way of not putting yourself under too much stress. So I get it. I get it. However, here's where it gets sticky. If you are looking for growth, physical, mental, and financial growth, and this is what the podcast is about, you can't just lay down. You can't just lay down and believe that stuff, because it's never worked that way. It never works that way, right? What's required is to actually acknowledge this stuff, this inconvenient, exhausting work called you, right? Once you start doing that work, all I can tell you is the juice is worth the squeeze. I'm just 19 years recovered right now from being a sleepwalker like everybody else. And it gets easier. It never gets easy, but it gets easier, and the juice is worth the squeeze. You'll recapture your youth. You'll recapture control of your perception. You'll be able to change the way you look at things anytime you want, so that the things you look at change. You'll be a reality bender. That's what we're doing in our community. So if that excites you and you're interested in that, and you want to do this, and you want to oil this machine and practice, you want to sharpen that sword, just write community and you can come with us. And that's it for today, because there's so much more in the podcast episode, but just make sure that you come along with us. We hope that you'll support the podcast and the Make Sense Academy, which is how we support the podcast. But love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing Monday. And that's it for today. We'll see you next time. Every Monday we come here live, and we go live in the community, my wife and I, every other day. Have an amazing day. Love and appreciate you.